After yesterday's video, in which I simply asked the question of my audience as to whether they thought it was time to dispense of the services of Big Ange Postecoglu, I received countless messages, sometimes pretty vitriolic, arguing both for and against his sacking. As I said at the end of the piece yesterday, I personally think that Big Ange deserves at least the rest of this season and really should get to see out his 3+1 contract. But not everyone agrees. So I wanted to dive deeper into the situation with Jory, who texted me last night saying the following: "We need to have the talk, don't we?" And suggesting that he has a different take on it. So welcome back to the show, Jory. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good. Getting over the weekend's disappointment as we regularly have to do.
We regularly have to do with these 2 week international breaks, but let's start really at that Ipswich game. I mean, simple question: what went wrong?
I mean, obviously, they didn't turn up. It for me, it was yet another display of the culture that we simply can't shake, no matter what we do. It seems. So yeah, they didn't turn up. I don't think there was anything more to it really. They just didn't turn up.
And that being the culture of the trickle down effect all the way from Daniel Levy down, not enough desire to
Well,
win.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, yeah. I mean, I think there is a culture, almost like a tradition of packing your bags really early in our club, clearly. But also with the smaller games and stuff like that, it's entitlement type mentality, I guess. I think, to be honest, I think it's when I mean, I have 5 kids, and so I'll take some dad psychology on it. And thing is, if one parent is strict and toes the line, and the other one doesn't,
Mhm.
then it's never gonna work really. So then you'll always find them, skewing towards the lenient parent, and that's what we're seeing. I think in terms of these players, they know that they don't they the pressure that maybe Ants is putting on them, which Conte put on them, which Mourinho put on them, and so on, is not shared higher up the chain. So
Mm.
they kind of just ignore their manager in this moment and do what they do. So yeah.
That brings me nicely into the next question, actually, which is I wanted to ask you how you think the players actually feel about Big Ange. Like, it's always felt to me, kind of, I guess, up to now or up to the last maybe couple of months, that they really rate him. They think he's worth listening to and think he's obviously tactically got ideas that are going to work for them. But as you kind of just mentioned or alluded to, we have seen so many experiences of how quickly this club's players can turn away from a manager. Is there any
Mhm.
feeling, do you have any feeling that that's happening yet?
Yeah, to some extent. I think some of the group maybe not turn away from it, but lost belief in the sense that, like there's been a lot of talk about Hugo Lloris's comments and stuff like that, and I find it interesting because Hugo, of course, was a massive winner in his career with France and so on. But also he was a timid captain for my taste, and he was actually, especially with Mourinho, I thought he was one of the most disgraceful in his behavior, in the way that they threw Mourinho under the bus in the last couple of games. But if I have to analyze that, psychoanalyze that, when you're in an institution that you don't believe in because they don't show that ruthlessness when it comes to winning, then you can't really blame the players for then taking note of that and reacting accordingly. And I think half maybe half of our squad or something are there. Some want to go out, some want to get out, others ju just are not, are ready to take a break whenever they can. And then you have people like I'm completely convinced that Decky doesn't let any of these kind of stuff bother him. He has his own ambition, and nothing's gonna, kind of disturb him. He's a professional through and through. But and you have more players maybe like that, but the more that this keeps going, the more it's gonna infect the rest of the squad. Yeah.
Just playing devil's advocate a little bit, wouldn't and you mentioned the Hugo Lloris comments, wouldn't
Mhm.
Daniel Levy say in response to those, well, hold on, I sacked the most successful manager in our, in the last few generations to bring in a win now manager and pay him a lot more money and the guy who was going to bring the trophies, and that didn't work. So how can you blame me? I'm not necessarily suggesting that I agree with that, but I think that would be his argument, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, what I think, whether you're Levy in or Levy out, or Ange in or Ange out or whatever, I think I, I really can't see how you can deny the fact that whatever Tottenham is, we are successful. We're the third richest sporting entity in the world, or this third
Most profitable, yeah.
profitable. Yeah, and I think or like, this is probably higher now, but at one point it was the eighth richest club in the world, and that's the success. That is the success. And from the way we're run, the way what we are, this is what success is defined as. And I'm not saying Levy doesn't want to win a trophy or whatever. I'm saying that it's run in this way, and I've talked about it before. Things like, for example, our credit rating has a huge impact on the profitability of a club. And once you're into that kind of credit rating game, it means you need to hit certain markers of profitability every quarter, and that's the real game. Whether people want to say that Levy is still trying to build a club and be successful and all of that, fine, but it's never gonna come at the expense of this priority.
Right.
So, and I think I really don't know what to say to people who believe something differently. This is not a Levy out rant. I'm just saying, like, whether you're one or the other, this is the fact that we need to face. The question then becomes, can you do both? I would say, yeah, theoretically you can do both, but the thing about also Levy and the board, how they run things, they are they're merchants. It's kind of like a shopkeeper
Mm.
business model that we're running, which is fine, but that's a conservative model. That's one that avoids risk at all cost, and just steadily grows and grows and grows, which we've been doing on the business side. And this is different from Madrid, Barcelona, even you could say Arsenal at the
Mm.
last couple of
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
But you see other clubs doing it in this exact same way. I would even say Liverpool is now
Yep.
really back to that model. They started like that. They took a break from it and a little bit, and now they're back to that. And then you have the pariah type situation, which we've seen in United, which is the worst one. Um, but this is what, like, I don't pretend to have the answer. I would say one thing in terms of, if it is it possible to run it like this and be successful on the field. I do not think it's possible to win in any, or be a winning organization in any real sense, without being willing to match whatever the wage structure
Yeah.
is in your league. So yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was actually going to ask. I was going to say, is there any situation in which you would see or could foresee Daniel Levy changing the wage structure up from kind of sixth or fifth in the Premier League, which it's always been in the last decade or more, up to the kind of second, third, fourth, where it would probably need to be to see him succeeding in an, like you said, in an organizational way where you could be consistent winners. I mean, I think basically what you're saying is because he's unwilling, or they're unwilling, ENIC are unwilling to ever take any risks, probably not.
Mm. I mean, they've taken a little bit more risk with Ange, I think, but it's still the same paradigm. So
Haven't they
I
taken a
mean,
cheaper risk with Ange? Because
yeah, I wouldn't even say
they've actually lowered the wage structure since Hugo and
exactly.
Eric Dyer and
Yeah,
Harry Kane left.
yeah, I was gonna walk it back. I would say it's not more risk, but they've put more at stake or more money into it. So, but actually, yeah, you would actually say maybe the risk is lower, and that's typical this business model, typical Daniel Levy. He's not like, you can go to similar people that operate in a similar way and you will get the playbook for what we've been doing for so long, which is, okay, now we're getting Levy to spend more. What does that mean? That means that actually he wants to lower the risk with lowering the wages, with bringing in more young players rather than established players, and so on. So and this is just him, how he operates. Like once again, I'm not trying to put on Daniel Levy what his footballing ambition is. I'm just saying this is his universe, and this is where we are the most successful.
Mm.
And that's what really, really matters, not only in terms of how he personally works, which I think is a big factor in it for sure. That's why he's so good at it, because this is very natural to him.
Mm.
I also think just in terms of that model, this business model that we're in, this is how it's going to go. And you know, to change up to a model where you're like prior. I mean, even though Abramovich spent crazy, we thought, you know, like it was a very profitable enterprise still, you know. So you can be very risk taking and very much on the edge with everything as long as the results come in, you know. The same with Madrid, and now Barcelona looked in a very bad place, but now they're coming back and so on. It's simply, in, I guess, in every business model, it's a question of following through in that and believing in that. And this is what we're doing in our model, and our model hasn't been successful for 20 years. I don't really think we have any reason to just think that because we get this player or this manager that it's going to change. I don't think so, you know. Yeah,
Well, that's
I mean,
depressing. That's depressing,
yeah,
Joey, isn't it?
it's very depressing. But one thing I would say, to once again, ants out, ants in, leave out, leave in. What we need to do, what we should find a truce around now is, let's run this project
Yeah.
to its full on these circumstances, and at the end of it, if we're seeing the same rot set in, like it's not there yet. Maybe it's going quicker every cycle. Maybe we've started the downward cycle, but let's run it to the end. And after that, we have to conclude that whether we take a brilliant up-and-coming manager, established young players, established like all of it is not working. And then like I said, I'm not trying to score cheap points to get one over on the board.
Mm.
It's the fact that you know, we're a little bit so we're a sporting corporation entertainment company.
Mm-hmm.
But in that sporting corporation entertainment company, there is a club, a real club with a real heart. And if this can, oh, for me, and I would hope more and more people open their eyes to it, we have to understand that that cooperation has captured the club in the sense that the club cannot flourish, cannot evolve in that corporate structure as it is now. But once again, I would say, just for the sake of argument, let's run it through. Let's give, and for me, Ange is the likeliest candidate, or somebody like Ange, to actually have a shot at making this corporate style running and on-field success come together and make something, So yeah.
Can I ask you a question then? Because it's just occurred to me. I mean, when Pochettino had, his 5 years and what I would deem to be his success, as much as you can have success without winning trophies, it struck me. Would you look at that in hindsight as almost like luck in terms of, Pochettino came at the right time in terms of his ambition, his drive, and his development, and the players were kind of almost, in the most part, already at the club, almost more by luck than judgment, who then had the right personalities, the right motivation, and the right talent to fit in with that manager at that time. Because actually, what he achieved was far in advance of Daniel Levy's plan, and has almost, in hindsight, been a bit of a kind of noose around Levy's neck because of his inability to find anyone or any strategy to repeat it. So do you think that was kind of more luck than judgment? And is Levy therefore kind of almost scrabbling around for another piece of luck like that again?
I mean, I think there was a lot of luck with that whole process, but in terms of appointing Pochettino, I actually think Levy and his people around him actually, they have fairly sound kind of reasoning, footballing reasoning for those appointments. It's the recruitment of players and following through with what that manager then is. That's usually the problem. So I'm pretty sure that they identified Pochettino as a really up and coming and important manager to come. In terms of what then happened was luck, but I've also said, and I was a couple of years ago, I kind of alluded it to, like when I went way out on the conspiracy leds, I said, well, actually, maybe ENIC wouldn't love too much success in the FA Cup and stuff like that, because there's no money in it, and it commits. It makes you, now you need to repeat. Now you need to go the next step and so on. So it will up the pressure on them to be even more ambitious. The ambition in terms of managers has, I would say, for me at least, it hasn't been lacking in that sense. But it's, for me also, it's not a cheap way, but a cheaper way to silence the critics, to basically, and that's what happens. Like I would say to you, Barnaby, was Pochettino failing, or was the institution failing Pochettino? For me, I'm the latter. Like I would be convinced, and I would say that really the same about Mourinho and Conte. If you give them even just partly what they need and follow their model, not your model, their model, and run it through, then you will have something at the end.
I agree, Jory. And actually, let me answer what you said about Pochettino, because I spoke about Pochettino at the time as being like, I thought Pochettino could be our legacy manager, like our version of Alex Ferguson. And I really think in hindsight, and I thought the same at the time, even though we'd had a bad year and everyone talked about the away form and having had a bad start to the season, we just lost that game at Brighton, hadn't we? I would still have said even then he should be like our Diego Simeone. He should be the manager that even if he has a bad season, he's the one who's allowed to rebuild. And I think Simeone's had about 3 bad seasons, and each time has rebuilt at Atletico Madrid, and he's been there for donkey's years now. The only thing against that for Pochettino is, and this is probably because Pochettino got the sense that Levy wasn't going to back him for the rebuild the way he needed to be backed. That
Hmm.
Pochettino was making eyes at Manchester United, for instance.
Hmm.
He was, you heard these little leaks and stuff. He was interested in
Hmm.
going somewhere bigger. And to be fair to him, he'd done enough to deserve that. But yeah. So I could still blame, I could still
No, but
blame Levy for
I
that.
completely agree there, Barnaby. But I would say, like this is my conviction is that Pochettino had arrived at a point where he saw that it's hopeless for him to get beyond that threshold that
Mm,
we never seem to get beyond. And the players do this all the time. They see it's a hopeless. Cudi is doing this now. I think
mm,
they see
mm.
how dysfunctional in terms of on-field success this club is, and not only dysfunctional, but it's really not the priority. And like I said, I'm sure Daniel Levy would take any trophy he could get as long as it doesn't swerve the organization away from what he's doing anyway. And that's the problem. We won't get there without that. When they see that, you can't really, as such, blame them for downing tools almost and wanting an exit, because they live it every day, and if they don't see a path to success, then they're not going to get it from the media or even the fans chanting about it or whatever. They are the insiders. They know better than anybody how viable that path is. So I don't blame it, but what I blame players and managers as well, and this goes for Hans as well, is that you need to call it out before you go. You need to make a ruckus, not necessarily the Conte rant,
Mhm.
which personally I love, but just in your own way, make your message that this is about how the institution is working.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I mean, there might be other things as well, but if that's the case, which I think is way too often the case, and Tottenham is for many agents and players out there, goes for players and managers, a stepping stone onto other things.
Mm.
And we will never get away from that. We're also seeing now that now, for me, we put together a pretty strong squad. We definitely need the SA/Grealish level wingers and maybe midfielder as well and so on. But then we're on to something in terms of squad. But is that going to happen in time before we lose our best center backs, in time
Yeah.
before we lose our best striker and so on? No, I don't think so. That's, it's leaking in both ends a little bit, I think. So yeah,
I mean,
that's
let me just ask you
yeah.
a couple of things before we finish.
Mhm.
One is a bit more specific, which is actually, is there any element? I agree with everything you're saying, and this is kind of the bigger picture. But in terms of the smaller picture, like how much have the kind of absences of certainly Mickey van der Ven and maybe even Wilson Odobert affected us in terms of Odobert? I'm talking specifically about his ability to take someone on one versus one and attract opposing defenders more to him and make space for other people. And then
Yeah.
obviously Van der Ven. That I personally feel if we'd had those players available for the last four games, we probably would have 4 or 5 more points.
Yeah, which might have given the players a little bit more motivation and belief,
Hmm,
so we wouldn't have seen these capitulations that we've seen now.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, I agree. But just in general, I think the left front side has been a problem, and the right back side has been a problem. Like that is our two biggest problems. The right side has more to do with Cody's engagement and level of performance. I think also a little bit of mixing it up there in personnel, but I do think, yeah, we would have gotten better results, which would have alleviated some of the pressure and so on. So we might have seen different reactions from the players in those games that were so disappointed by. But I still think, Barnaby, to be honest, I think, I don't think they're going to fire him now. And I
Mm.
hope that the pressure doesn't grow from here. I'm sure that we'll come back and beat City or whatever, like, even
Yeah,
though we should be doing, but that would be so
classic.
typical,
Yeah,
But what I'm hoping, Barnaby, and what I encourage everybody on the fan side, and I encourage Ants and the players, go on a run now. And while that run is still going, pile on the pressure on the board and the organization, just like Ants did a little bit. Top four is not a trophy. I don't care about winning one season. I want to make a winning club, and pile that on now, big time, while you're successful. Then that will make a different pressure without all the toxicity, and hopefully we can see some resolve, some ambition from the board now in the January window, and we can keep going, and we can really, give it a shot. Levy, give us one shot at this, to do it the right way this next
yeah.
summer,
But
and
Jory,
and let's
he's
see.
gonna need to win every game before January to have the collateral to do that. Like,
Probably something like that, but also, Barnaby, the way we play, if like the mentality, if you can get that up to top motivation, as you know, this squad, barring injuries, is capable of amazing stuff as well.
yeah.
So let's not forget that. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, Jory, mate, thank you as ever. A brilliant chat. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, thank you for watching and listening at home. Please do press the like button. Do subscribe to the channel for daily Tottenham Hotspur content, and go over to the podcast platforms, be that Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give me a subscribe or follow there, really helps. And what are we at? Wednesday of the first week of the international break. Just try and get through it, guys. Just try and get through it. Come on, you Spurs.